Hey folks, welcome back to Infinite Podcast, where we dive deep without needing a breath. Today, we're unraveling the mystery behind generational wealth. Think it's all about being born with a silver spoon? Nah, it starts with savvy moves like stocks, bonds, or snapping up real estate. People often think this game is out of their league, but we're here to break down that barrier. Let's talk first steps to building not just your bank account, but a legacy. Simon, I bet you've heard some wild myths about creating wealth. Hit me with one.
Oh, absolutely. The one that cracks me up every time is when people think investing is like throwing money into a black hole and just hoping it somehow spits back more money. Like they believe there's some magical stock market fairy dust. Newsflash, it's not magic. It's being smart where you put your cash. And hey, my grandpa was no Warren Buffett, but even he had a few tricks up his sleeve with that dusty old property he bought. Turned out to be a gold mine.
Totally, Simon. Grandpa was onto something. Real estate can be like a fine wine, gets better with time. If you pick the right bottle, that is. Buying property is one of those classic moves that seems complex, but really, it's all about research and timing. Folks often miss out because they think it's only for the rich. But here's the deal. Start small, like say with a REIT, a real estate investment trust. Lets you dip your toes in without buying the whole beach, you know?
All right, hold up a second. Let's not sugarcoat it. Even starting small has its, hiccups. People think REITs are as easy as pie, but that pie can sometimes leave a sour taste if you're not careful about where you're putting your money, like which trust and all that jazz. Plus, let's not tiptoe around the fact that even with REITs, you need to have some cash on hand to start. So yeah, Joe, while it's an option, it's not a magic bean that grows an instant beanstalk up to the golden goose.
Right, right. You've got a point there, Simon. Starting small doesn't mean it's without its drawbacks. Got to watch out for where exactly that hard-earned cash is going. REITs can be a slice of the pie, but only if it's your kind of dessert. And yeah, the dough to get it, it matters. So what would you say is like the most crucial thing to look for when you're just dipping into these investments, huh?
So hey folks who just tuned in, we're talking the ABCs of stacking up those dollars for the long haul, not just for your wallet, but also for like your kids and their kids. It's all about playing it smart with where you're putting your money, be it stocks, bonds, or getting in on real estate without buying the whole building. Yeah, some folks think you got to be rolling in it to start, but nah, it's about making wise choices with what you've got. Like, even something small can turn into a big deal in the future. We're just chopping it up here, trying to make sense of it all without making our heads spin. Right, Simon?
Yeah, so what it boils down to with investing is starting where you're at. It's like don't wait till you're swimming in bucks to get going, right? Take stocks. People shy away thinking they need to buy big names, but nah, there's these things called index funds. They're sort of a mixtape of stocks, less risky, because you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. The point is, start now and be consistent. Like even if it's just a little bit on the regular, compounding interest works its magic over time. Kind of cool, huh?
Well, sure. Index funds sound like they're all the rage with that whole less risk vibe and everything, but let's flip the script for a sec. One word, fees. Yep, even your so-called low-cost index fund nibbles away at your returns over time, because nothing's free, right? And also, like not all index funds are created equal. You've got to spy on the fund's track record, check out the management fees, because let me tell you, those can eat into your potential gains like termites in a wooden shack. Plus, there's no guarantee of returns. The market's moody, man. Sometimes it gives, sometimes it takes. So while starting early is key, where you park your dough matters just as much, if not more.
Absolutely, Simon. Fees, those silent returns killers. Listeners, got to stay sharp here. Even a 1% fee can chew up like a huge chunk of your investment over, say, 30 years. It's that compounding in reverse, biting you in the backside. And about index funds diversity, yeah, it sounds sweet till you realize not all have the same composition or sectors covered. They can vary big time. For example, an S&P 500 fund is different from a total market fund. They've got different spreads and risks. Plus, past performance ain't a guarantee for the future. Markets go up, markets go down. More like a roller coaster than a moody person. Don't get lulled by past numbers. When parking that dough, look at expense ratios. Be wary of actively managed funds' fees. They often don't outperform enough to justify their costs over a passive index fund. And hey, diversify. Never put all those eggs in one basket unless you want scrambled eggs. Stocks here, bonds there. Sprinkle some real estate for good measure. Azvania.
Diversify. I mean, sure, that's the holy grail, but let's be real for a second. Diversification feels like you're splitting up your favorite band to make sure the music plays on, even if the lead singer chokes on a sandwich, yeah? But there's gotta be a better way than just scattering your cash and hoping for the best. And hold on. Expense ratios, management fees? Let's not glaze over the fact that looking at these numbers can sometimes feel like you're trying to read hieroglyphics without a Rosetta Stone. It's not everyone's cup of coffee. And index funds, can we talk active versus passive management here? Some folks like riding with an active manager who's all about beating the market. Oh, and those passive funds are more like set it and forget it, which sounds chill until you remember you're actually trying to grow your family's treasure chest, not watch paint dry. So sure, plan for the future, invest for the kiddos, but maybe think twice before blindly following the flock towards what's trendy in investing, because who wants to find out they've been sheared when it's time to retire, right? Now, Joe, how about tackling the illusion of risk-free to give our listeners something juicy?
Right, risk-free? Might as well believe in unicorns. Look, folks, every investment's got teeth, and even the so-called safe ones can bite. Now let's sink our teeth into that juicy myth.
Oh, risk-free? That's the same as saying my grandma's cat is harmless. Sure, until it goes kamikaze on your ankles. No such thing, guys.
This whole risk-free deal reminds me of something. Back when I started dipping my toes into investing, I was, let's say, naive. I put cash into what was sold to me as a can't-lose bond. Safe as houses, they said. So there I am, feeling like a financial guru while my buddy warns me about market shifts and inflation chipping away at fixed incomes. I shrugged it off. Couldn't be me, right? Fast forward a few years. That safe return was more like a slow leak. A tire losing air so slowly you don't notice until it's flat on the ground. That's when the old light bulb went off in my head. There really isn't any investment that's bulletproof. It's all about riding the waves, not finding a mythical calm sea. Lesson learned. Always question the sure thing. Investing is a game of smarts, not wishes.
Oh yeah, Joe, safe as houses, except when the house is on fire, right? That so-called can't-lose stuff is basically just someone selling you a fancy mattress to hide your money under. There's always fine print in those stories, and a lot of people forget to read it. So, to put a bow on this, sure, keep an eye out for low-risk options, but remember, even the safest-looking streets can have potholes. Don't chase unicorns, folks. Now, about setting up that financial future for the fam. What do you think's key to balance when we're talking generations here?
Yeah, Simon, setting up that financial future is all about balance and foresight. Speaking of foresight, imagine if you could zip back in time and give those ancestors some killer advice on compound interest. You'd be like, hey, great-great-grandpa, put down the horse reins and check this out. Compound interest. Let's have some fun with it. What if we're time travelers giving financial tips? I mean, think about turning a small stash into a mountain of cash for the family jewels. What would be your go-to wisdom for old Grandpappy if you had the chance?
All right, imagine rolling up to your great-great-grandpappy. You're like, Pops, listen here. Take that nickel you were about to blow on the world's first chewing gum and toss it in a bank instead. Trust me, with compound interest, by the time your future grandkids hit 2023, they'll be rolling in dough. They could buy, I don't know, a rocket or something. Just don't tell them you got the tip from a guy with a magical pocket gadget. They might think you started hitting the moonshine too hard.
Ha! Love it, Simon. But imagine Grandpappy's face when you're telling him about compound interest and he's just worried about those horse buggies outside. Okay, let's be real. People back then, tossing nickels in the bank was as fanciful as, say, folks now buying digital art with crypto. It's all future talk. Anyway, I'd tell Gramps, look, every penny you save now could be worth a fortune. Don't buy that extra barrel of hay, just put some coins away. With interest compounding, your great-grandkids might not need to work a day in their lives. But here's the kicker. Not every savings method back then was solid. You know, banks weren't too safe. Heck, if you picked the wrong one, poof, there goes the family fortune. Maybe burying treasure wasn't such a bad idea after all, at least until FDIC insurance came along. But the lesson still stands. Invest early, often, and wisely, even if it sounds like sci-fi, to pave the golden road for future generations.
So okay, sure, we're all aboard this compounding interest train, and time travel tips are, a fun spin. But let's pump the brakes. Back in Grandpappy's day, banking wasn't what it is today. Like if he puts his hard-earned nickels away hoping for compound interest magic, there was a real chance that bank could just up and vanish like a snipe during hunting season. No FDIC to back you up before 1933. And inflation? That's a silent fortune eater right there. His nickel might grow on paper, but buy much less by the future. Let's face it, investing has always been about more than just stashing cash away. It's about smart moves and diversifying. So yeah, while saving is solid, Joe, our ancestors faced risks that even the best interest rates couldn't always beat. You got to consider the whole picture, the ups, downs, ins, and outs of each era's economy when we're dishing out time traveler finance nuggets.
You're spot on, Simon. But maybe that's the secret sauce, understanding risk and playing the long game. Heck, if we could time travel, throw in a bit about diversification. Invest in land, Gramps, not all your fields in one place. Now let's figure out how to ride that compounding interest wave without getting wiped out by economic tsunamis. How do you surf that in your time machine?
Oh man, Joe. So, this one time, my buddy and I headed to the beach for some surfing. We're no pros, right? And there we were, staring at these massive waves out of our league. Like I'm thinking about dipping a toe in, maybe stick with safe waters. But my friend, this dude just cannonballs into the swell. He wiped out big time. Yeah? Wetsuit zipper busted open kind of disaster. But here's the thing. He learned to read the waves better next time. It was wild. Just like investing. Start small. Get your feet wet before taking on maverick-sized risks. Learn from every bail, because that's how you eventually ride the compounding wave without getting totally, hammered by those economic tsunamis you mentioned.
Yeah, man, I get the whole start small, get your feet wet vibe. But here's a twist. Let's say you actually could hit the past with some wisdom. We'd tell Gramps about diversifying, but it's not just land investments, right? Maybe sprinkle in some stocks that paid dividends too, even though he'd be like, what in tarnation is a stock? And this ties into compound interest because if he reinvests those dividends, dude, it's like catching a gnarly wave and riding it all the way through time. You don't just bail at the first sign of chop. You learn to hang 10 on that financial surfboard, right? But wait, honestly, Simon, even with smart moves, our time traveler's tip can't guarantee a golden future. Inflation, wars, depressions, those risks are real. Just parking cash or going all in on one thing, even if it's compounded, might leave future you wishing Gramps had diversified across different types of assets. Bottom line, teach Gramps to spread out his bets, ride out the rough seas, and maybe, just maybe, he'll set up generations to come. Makes you wonder how much investing advice has really changed, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Tell Gramps to split his bets, right? Back then, someone saying, hey, buy some stocks was probably like telling someone today to invest in Mars real estate. But hey, it's about playing the long game through all the mess, wars, crashes, you name it. And let's not forget about these dividend stocks, like you said. They're the gift that keeps on giving if you reinvest them. It's that snowball effect with compound interest. You're turning those little gains into a financial avalanche for the fam. What I'm trying to say is, diversifying ain't new, Joe. It's time-tested wisdom with a dash of patience. So sure, we'd want Grampy to sprinkle his seeds far and wide, grow different money trees, not just one big redwood. We got to think past, present, future, all at once. Man, investing's kinda like a 4D chess game when you throw time travel in the mix.
Bingo, Simon. Investing's indeed like 4D chess. Imagine telling Gramps not just about stocks, but also throwing in a bit about future tech. Invest in that newfangled electricity thing, trust me. That could have spiced up the family portfolio. Now let's switch gears. What if we talked about how to navigate today's investment landscape with an ancestor's wisdom?
Imagine Gramps sitting us down, chewing on a piece of straw, schooling us on the basics. Like, don't put all your eggs in one basket, straight from the farmer's almanac of good sense. Now there's a twist. Old school smarts meets new age tech.
Yeah, I had this neighbor once, old timer with stories for days. One day he pulls me aside and tells me about his cherry orchard. He says to me, Joe, don't just rely on the sweetness of cherries. See, he diversified, planted apples, peaches, because a bad bug or frost could wipe out one crop, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about. His wisdom was all about protecting his earnings, spreading the risk. It wasn't about quick cash. It was more about ensuring there'd be something to harvest every season. So when we dive into tech, stocks, crypto, it's the same deal. Balance the new with time-tested logic. Slow and steady can win the race. It's not flashy, but it's resilient, just like my neighbor's orchard.
Right, Joe. It's like mixing old recipes with new ingredients. Tastes might change, but the cooking principles stay solid. Your neighbor's mixed orchard is an age-old story of diversification fitting snugly in today's complex investment pie. Speaking of pies and cherries, it makes me think, if we had a time machine, could we go back and invent cherry-flavored crypto? Just kidding. Seriously, though, it all circles back to not putting all your future on one horse. What do you think grandparents of 2123 will be advising their kin about our investment choices now?
You know, Simon, that cherry-flavored crypto joke actually isn't too far off. It gets me thinking about those digital assets grandparents in the future might be sorting through, weaving Bitcoin, Ethereum, and who knows what else into their kids' inheritance plans. Just picture it. Alrighty, kiddo, make sure to keep your digital wallet more secure than Fort Knox. But there's real stuff to consider here. This ain't monopoly money we're talking about. Cryptocurrency is a whole new breed of asset. And hey, they'll probably need a how-to guide just for figuring out tax on that stuff, because Uncle Sam will definitely want a piece of that digital pie. Plus, then there's the matter of passing on those elusive digital keys without them getting lost in the cyber abyss. That right there, that's one 21st century problem our old man with the orchard would never have dreamed up.
So, we're talking digital dough in the old family cookie jar, huh? That's a twist, like trying to stash Bitcoin under your virtual mattress for the kids. But here's where my brain goes. What if you kick the bucket and nobody can find your passwords? We gotta tattoo our private keys on our arms, or what? And how do you even start to explain that to the tax man without him scratching his head clean off? I mean, keeping crypto secure is one thing, but making sure it doesn't poof into thin air when you're gone? Dude, that's some high-stakes hide-and-seek. Plus, blockchain's got those wrenches to throw in, smart contracts and all that jazz. It ain't just tucking away paper bonds in a safety deposit box anymore. So, I gotta ask, Joe, how do folks even begin to navigate this stuff without getting their wires crossed?
Ha, Simon, you're really onto something. The tattoo idea's out there, but hey, maybe biometric keys are next. Fingerprints to access your funds. Beats leaving your heirs with a wild crypto scavenger hunt.
Biometric keys? That's both brilliant and, I don't know, a bit spooky. But for real, imagine explaining to Grandma Ethel why we're scanning our irises just to check our balance. It's like security on steroids. Still, you gotta wonder, what if the tech glitches? You wake up with puffy eyes and boom, access denied to your life savings. Makes you think we need a backup plan, huh? Or maybe it's a sign we shouldn't put all our eggs, or should I say bitcoins, in one basket. So what do you think, Joe? Are these digital treasure maps pointing us towards a safer future, or more like leading us down the rabbit hole of complexity?
Man, Simon, you're firing on all cylinders. Yeah, biometric security is cutting edge, but too many eggs in the tech basket? That could scramble things up. We're veering into sci-fi territory. Your face is your password, but then what about twins or hell, a bad sunburn? It's wild when you think about it. High-tech solutions are cool until they're not. You gotta strike that balance, go full-on futuristic with your crypto stash, but keep your feet on the ground with some old-school common sense. A diverse portfolio isn't just smart, it's survival. And backup plans like analog copies of keys, those are clutch, man. This rabbit hole goes deep, no doubt. But hey, that's the ride we signed up for. We've got to navigate with our eyes wide open, wired, and ready for whatever this digital wonderland throws at us.
Yeah. So about keeping a diverse portfolio, it's like you don't want to put all your faith in tech alone. Because, tech can fizzle out, man. Like, okay, for crypto inheritance, sure, think high tech for security, biometrics, multi-signature wallets, all that jazz. But also, remember to sprinkle in some low-tech solutions. Imagine writing down those keys and storing them somewhere super safe, but not so safe you forget where. It's funny but serious. And then there are smart contracts on the blockchain, right? They could automatically pass your digital assets to heirs, which sounds dope. But what if there's a bug or something changes in the network protocol? Gotta have contingency plans. So it's about mixing the old and the new, like a cocktail of past wisdom with future tech, ensuring that even if one thing goes belly up, you're not completely done for. This stuff, you gotta respect it. It's complex, it's tricky, and it's honestly pretty thrilling to navigate.
There's a thought. We could even end up with executors specialized in digital assets. Last will and token testament specialists who wrangle code and contracts, making sure your crypto doesn't vanish like a ghost in the machine. Now there's a job that didn't exist a decade ago.
Last will and token testament. I love it. Sounds like a funky side gig. Move over tech support. Here comes the crypto executor, a modern-day wizard to guard your digital gold stash. We're in an era where managing bits and bytes could be as important as physical assets. Just think about that for a sec, Joe. Suddenly, there's this whole new job market popping up to stop your virtual coins from pulling a Houdini. The possibilities? Endless. And the complications? Well, let's just say we're probably only scratching the surface. So what's next, you reckon?
Man, this crypto executor talk has really got me thinking. We focus heaps on transferring wealth, but what about the values that guide what we do with it? There's this concept of ethical will's a chance to pass along more than just assets, to actually encode your values and life lessons for the next gen. That's got to have some serious impact, right? How you leave your mark isn't just about the dollars, it's those intangibles too.
For sure, Joe. But let's think about this. Values and life lessons are super personal, right? So encoding your values might be, a bit pushy. Like, say you're all about conserving wildlife, but your kid wants to invest in tech startups instead of saving the turtles. Do we really back the idea that our values should kind of haunt them from beyond the grave? I mean, a stack of cash comes with strings attached. Now we're adding moral fiber to those strings? Sure, it's nice to hope they'll carry on your legacy, but what if they want to blaze their own trail? Kind of seems like we're setting up for a guilt trip bonanza. Thoughts?
Ethical wills date back centuries, originally part of Jewish tradition. These documents served as a way to pass on ethics and values from one generation to the next. They're not legally binding like last wills that distribute your assets, but they carry emotional weight, providing insight into what mattered most to you. Nowadays, this concept is broadening its appeal across cultures. As it's becoming more mainstream, ethical wills are seen as a key part of legacy planning, equal parts moral compass and memoir. It's an opportunity to articulate the why behind your life's choices and wishes. Sure, it could feel like overreach, but if crafted thoughtfully, it can be an empowering handoff rather than a shackle, for both heirs and the ones who've passed, preserving personal narratives alongside material wealth.
Yeah, I get that. Ethical wills being like a snapshot of who you were. Joe, it's sort of like leaving behind a mixtape of your greatest hits, but instead of songs, it's your beliefs, your values. Still, there's this niggling thought at the back of my mind. What if your kids are more into death metal and you're all about that classical life? But seriously, I suppose it's kind of nice to have your story told, to pass on the why as much as the what. Might help Junior not blow the inheritance on inflatable pool toys or something. It's a way to keep family stories alive, weave in some wisdom, and give the future generations something to chew on beside the money. Like, how cool would it be to find out great-great-grandma was a bootlegger with a heart of gold? So, sure, ethical wills might not be everyone's jam, but they're a way to ensure your legacy isn't just about the cash, it's also about character.
You just sparked an idea, Simon. Imagine a world where these ethical wills become as common as Instagram profiles. You've got your bio out there for the whole family lineage to see. Now that'd crank up the ancestral story game to 11.
See, that's pretty wild. Like a social media story for the ages. I'm picturing scrolls of parchment with vintage filters slapped on top. It's like saying, hey, here's what I stood for, but in full, insta-glorious color. But, hey, this ethical will stuff, it wraps up your essence, serves it to the next gen like Sunday dinner. Leaves me wondering, though, Joe, do you think folks might feel pressure to live up to these ancestral Instagram highlights? Would it inspire or kind of smother them with expectation?
Right, Simon. We're all about chasing those likes on Insta, but an ethical will, it's like it garners respect clicks from the future fam. However, flip that coin, and what if there's a dark side? We slap on this massive expectation, living up to Granddad Joe's eco-warrior ways or Auntie Sue's entrepreneurship. Could be motivating, sure, but also might box them in. It's a thin line between sharing wisdom and inadvertently nailing down a path they feel they gotta walk. You know, will this be like thumbing through old thoughts for inspo or facing a legacy heavy as lead pressure much? Either way, makes you ponder how to pen those words so they uplift, not just guide. Gotta leave breathing room for them to write their own story, too.
Totally, it's a balancing act. You want to pass the torch without burning their hands. Ethical wills? Potent stuff. They're like planting seeds for an orchard you'll never see. Just gotta make sure those seeds can thrive in whatever soil the future's got in store. So hey, when we think about penning our own ethical wills one day, what stories are we itching to tell? And how do we ensure they empower, not overshadow? Something to chew on, right, Joe?
It's a tough one for sure. You're crafting the DNA of your clan in words and wishes, right? But speak of inheritance, we can't just talk legacies without touching on the complexity beast itself. Estate planning. This isn't just about who gets your vintage Star Wars collection. It's serious strategy stuff. Looking at this globally, it's wild how inheritance varies from one place to another. Every culture has its own rule book. And here's where heirs can hit a wall with challenges. Emotions run high, tax headaches, even family feuds over who gets what. All that chaos when pen meets paper and divvying up assets. Simon, it's like navigating a maze blindfolded. Thoughts on untangling these estate planning wires without getting zapped?
Joe, estate planning is this giant puzzle, right? I mean, you're spot on. It's more than just who bags the action figures or the cash. There's a ton of rules that, vary insanely by where you are on the map. And then, there's the family drama. I swear it's like reality TV, except no one's getting paid to watch. People get all emotional, squabble over grandma's china set, and before you know it, Thanksgiving dinner is more about the will than the pie. You've got to have some serious chops to navigate this beast without someone ending up wanting to haunt you. It's crazy important, but man, talk about a minefield. So what's the game plan? Go in with a lawyer sharp as a tack, or start mediating yoga sessions for the fam?
Lawyers are key, but let's not forget about fairness. That's the tricky part. Everyone thinks they deserve a slice of the pie, right? So, here's a curveball. Some folks are starting to record video wills, talking directly to their loved ones. It's personal, harder to contest, and sometimes it just lays things out clearer than legalese on paper ever could. Imagine sitting down, hitting play, and there's Grandpa explaining why little Timmy's getting the coin collection. Takes guts, yeah, but talk about cutting through the noise. It's an evolving game, Simon. Keeping everyone happy, like herding cats. And those yoga sessions, might need 'em after the inheritance chat to keep the family zen.
Video wills, huh? That's like jumping from pen and paper to high-def 3D. Sure, it's personal, but what if Grandpa was a rambler, or worse, decided to turn his last message into a stand-up special? Might not be as clear-cut as we'd hope. And fairness, man, that's subjective. Like, say Brother Bob spent every weekend fixing up the family home while Sister Sally was out, discovering herself in Bali. How do you split that pie? Yeah, lawyers are key, but even with them, there's always someone who feels shorted. It's one heck of a tightrope, us dishing out inheritances without sparking World War III. Almost makes me want to spend it all and just leave behind a treasure map. At least they'd have fun, right?
Heh, leaving a treasure map. Now that's a legacy with a dash of adventure. But we're talking real life here, not Pirates of the Caribbean. Estate planning? Can't just X marks the spot it. Consider this. Different folks might need different strokes. Like, what if you divvy things up based on needs or contributions instead? There's this thing called hodgepot, pooling all assets then sharing them out. Sure, it's old school, but could level the field. Yet, whatever system you pick, someone's going to feel stiffed. It's like deciding who gets the last slice of pizza. It's never just about hunger, it's principle. So as much as we joke about spending it all, it's about laying groundwork so there's less feud and more, I don't know, fair play when the curtain falls. Conundrum much?
Speaking of fair play, I got a story that hits close to home. See, my Uncle Rick, he was like into everything, coin collecting, rare books, you name it. Well, before he passed, he did this thing where he invited each niece and nephew over, like one by one, and he let them choose one item they loved most from his collection. It was super personal, no lawyers or hotchpot needed. And when the will came out, everyone already had their piece of Uncle Rick's world that meant something to him personally. Thinking back, it was a masterclass in keeping peace. It wasn't about value, but memories. So maybe there's a lesson here? Direct, simple communication, uncle to nephew style, that could cut through a lot of those inheritance headaches we're talking about. Keeps it real, right?
Simon, your Uncle Rick might have just cracked the code. Straight up, personal, alleviates the drama. It's often the small stuff, charged with memories, that sparks the real battles, not the big-ticket items. A lesson in legacy there. Talk it out, keep it real. Prevents World War III, like you said. And maybe simplicity is our torch through the inheritance maze, a way to shine a light on the nuances without burning the whole place down. There's plenty more to unpack on asset allocation, but hey, for now, who says we can't learn a thing or two from Uncle Rick?
Talking about Uncle Rick's way reminds me of some bonkers stories from back in the day. You know, those tales where somebody gets a massive windfall out of the blue, changes their whole world. Like, boom, you're a millionaire because some long-lost relative you never met kicked the bucket. There were real doozies that set the stage for today's inheritance law. Take, Hetty Green, the Witch of Wall Street. Her aunt just up and left her millions, which she turned into even more millions. Nuts, right? That kind of dough back then? Those old legal battles over estates could make a soap opera blush. Seriously, man. They laid down some ground rules we still use to dodge family fireworks. Makes our modern-day squabbles look like child's play.
Oh man, Hetty Green, she's like the OG of estate drama. But let's not forget that those groundbreaking cases often spilled into public view, practically theater for everyone watching. Take the Vanderbilts or the Astors. They weren't just setting precedents. They were inventing the blueprint for how we handle massive estates now. And, they've influenced more than just the legal geeks. War stories of inheritance battles. They're cautionary tales whispering through every will pen today. Like, hey, don't be that guy who sparked a decades-long family feud. It all trickles down to us, Simon. Those wild sagas from folks with last names like Carnegie or Rockefeller. They're lessons in what to do and, definitely what not to do. Plot lib.
Let's chew on another slice of history, like the tale of Luís Carlos de Noronha Cabral de Camara, a Portuguese aristocrat. This dude was a bachelor with no direct heirs, so he did something wild. He picked 70 strangers out of a Lisbon phone directory to inherit his estate. Then there's Charles Millar, a Canadian lawyer who had a real funny bone for his last will. The guy left shares in a jockey club to anti-gambling preachers. Talk about a practical joke from beyond the grave, right? Now, these kind of stories, they show us how unpredictable inheritances can be. Little surprises that shook things up big time. They didn't just affect the lucky ducks who caught the golden egg either. They set different examples and got people thinking outside the box about what legacies could look like. Kinda zany, sure, but man, those were some historic mic drops in the world of wills and estates.
Absolutely, Simon. Our buddy Luis here turned the phone book into a lottery ticket, and Miller, classic prankster move. These tales stir the pot. What if inheritances weren't just business, but chances to spark change or crack a posthumous joke? Makes you wonder what zany ideas people might be scribbling into their wills right now, doesn't it?
Um, yeah, Joe, these historic tales are wild, but let's not slap on too rosy glasses here. Remember when someone's inheritance chuckles become someone else's legal nightmare? Like Miller. Sure, it's a hoot to think of preachers inadvertently supporting gambling, but toss real people in that ring, and you've got a circus no one can control. Then take, Wellington R. Burt. This guy's will locked his fortune away for 21 years after his last grandkid died, created a pool of reluctant heirs twiddling their thumbs for decades. Sounds more like a script for a horror flick than a thoughtful legacy move. So hey, while kooky wills grab headlines, the fallout, it ain't all fun and games. Today, we're looking at this like, don't make your last words a punchline unless you want your kids hiring psychics instead of lawyers. Legacies packed with surprises sure make for epic yarns, but man, the shock value isn't always worth the chaos left behind.
Simon, playing devil's advocate here. Maybe, just maybe, there's some genius in the madness. Let's take Bert's time out on his fortune. Yeah, it sounds crazy. Lock up your cash until everyone who knew you is gone. But, it also means his wealth wasn't squandered immediately and ended up supporting generations. As for Miller's gag gift to those preachers, that kind of ironic bequest might actually push forward important conversations about gambling and morality. It's a stretch, I know, but unpredictable inheritances can shake up social norms, trigger legal debates, and hey, they keep inheritance law on its toes. The chaos from these legendary legacies, while incredibly messy, sometimes inadvertently creates positive ripples, new charities, revised laws, or stronger family bonds after the storm. So, yeah, let's not write off the pranksters and the eccentrics too fast. They've got their place in legacy lore.
Okay, Joe, I see your point. Shaking things up isn't always bad. But let's not hand out too much credit to our historical oddballs. Like, sure, Bert's delayed fortune had a silver lining for the future fam, but wasn't that just serious luck? And Millar's ironic gifts. They poked the bear, but did they really change the game or just give everyone a good story and a headache? I think you're onto something with these surprise inheritances triggering changes. Take the Robertson estate. That bad boy led to Princeton having to tighten up how they handled donations after the family sued when their cash didn't go where they wanted. But let me hit you with this. Aren't well thought out legacies, clear cut and heart to heart, more likely to leave things better than a coin toss from Aunt Agatha's will? We love to gab about the cooks who stir the pot, but maybe it's the sensible Joes, no pun intended, planning stuff sober-like, who actually build legacies that last without burning down the barn.
Simon, let's not forget, chaos can be a ladder. Throwing the occasional wild card from beyond the grave has made way for new rules and revised expectations. Keeps lawyers on their toes and wine-fueled family gatherings guessing who's writing a secret will under the table right now.
Hey listeners, if you're just tuning in, we've been gabbing about those bonkers inheritance stories from the history books, talked about folks like Hetty Green, old Luis Carlos with his telephone directory lottery, and jokesters like Charles Millar tossing a hot potato to some very confused preachers. Basically, we're chewing over how unpredictable wills have thrown curveballs at families and lawyers for decades. They could be serious nightmares, or sort of spark new ideas, or even, like, legal changes when money gets tossed around in ways no one saw coming. This chat's had everything from laughs about prankster legacies to nods to the sensible souls who actually might save future fam from tearing their hair out. It's been a wild ride through the loopy side of last wishes and, the mischief makers behind them. Keep it locked here as we keep unraveling these legacy yarns.
Yeah, speaking of left field legacies, I've got a story that kind of mirrors that unpredictability, sort of close to the heart. My great uncle, right, complete joker. Picture this huge collection of vintage baseball cards. We're talking Babe Ruth era gold dust. No kids, so we're all eyeballing those cards like it's Christmas morning. But here's the zinger he leaves them to his barber, a guy straight out of a sitcom who'd never watched a game in his life. Funny? Sure. But what happens next is Uncle Joe's trick turns into a legacy because the barber sells them and donates every dime to start a youth sports program. So, yeah, from chuckles at the will reading to changing kids' lives, seriously unexpected windfalls can turn into pretty powerful stuff.
Man, Joe, that's one for the books. Classic unexpected legacy with a twist. It's stories like your great uncles that really blur that line between head-scratching moves and, accidental genius. Goes to show how even the strangest bequests can sometimes knock it out of the park, changing the game in ways we can't even guess. And who knows what other untold tales are out there, waiting for us to dig up. Maybe our listeners have their own family folklore that's worthy of a history book, or at least a good old podcast chat. What do you say, folks? Got any wild inheritance stories to top Joe's card-collecting joker of an uncle?
Let's be real, Simon. Some of these wills sound like they were penned on April Fool's Day.
No kidding, Joe. You've got to wonder, like, what goes through people's heads when they're jotting down those kooky last wishes. Remember that guy who left a buddy some cash to put fresh flowers on his grave weekly? Like, I bet florists loved him, but sheesh, talk about job security from the other side. And those wacky wills. Woo, they sure give us a peek into what ticked inside folks' brains, which is kind of hilarious, but also pretty enlightening. So, do you reckon these antics say more about their sense of humor or something deeper? Maybe about how they saw life and afterlife?
Well, like these whimsical last wishes kind of serve as a final signature, right? It's like they're saying, remember me for my humor, not just my money or my stuff. It humanizes them beyond the grave. And let's not forget how some of these eccentric wills can actually hold up in court, depending on how they're phrased and local laws. But digging deeper, past the chuckles and raised eyebrows, it's almost like a mirror reflecting their approach to life, isn't it? Maybe they're trying to leave a legacy that says, don't take it all so seriously, or to perhaps encourage us to think differently about the stuff we often hold on to way too tightly.
Joe, that's a sweet thought and all, but, like, let's get real for a second. Some of these wacky wishes aren't just playful nudges. They're like final mic drops, leaving everyone scratching their heads long after the will's been read. But okay, mixing business with humor can be a hoot until someone ends up in court over a stuffed giraffe or who gets grandpa's ashes turned into a vinyl record. What starts as a chuckle can end with a family feud or a legal headache trying to untangle what the dearly departed really meant between the lines of those laugh-out-loud legacies. So yeah, they mirror life's lighthearted side, sure, but crossing fingers that those left behind keep their sense of humor when lawyer bills start soaring, right?
Hey there, listeners. If you're just tuning in, we've been having a bit of a chuckle over some bizarre bequests people have left behind in their wills, like folks leaving cash for weekly flowers on graves or other wacky stipulations that definitely raise some eyebrows. We've been digging into the curious part of human nature that opts for humor even when dealing with the serious biz of last wishes. Imagine being remembered for leaving someone a job watering your plants till eternity, or one of those lawyer bills because you wanted your ashes pressed into a record. Legality and how these oddball wishes pan out has been up in the air too. Sometimes they work, sometimes it's just a headache for everyone involved. So hang tight as we keep unspooling tales about the funny side of farewells and the lasting laughs or groans they can leave behind.
So Joe, what do you think compels people to, spice up their will with these off-the-wall requests? Is it like a final act of rebellion or just them trying to get the last laugh?
Man, I gotta say, it's like some folks treat their wills as a final chance to show their personality, a last laugh or a way to keep them in conversations for years. Like, remember when Uncle Mike left Steve the collection of rubber ducks? It's classic. They're crafting their legacy with humor instead of just assets. I mean, that's kind of legendary, right?
Sure, crafting a legacy with humor's legendary and all, but let's tap the brakes for a sec, Joe. There's this other side to it where, those left behind are kind of dealing with more than just grief. They're tackling this puzzle box full of rubber ducks or whatever. It can get, well, complicated when the sentimental value of an inheritance gets squished by a joke. Because, facts are the way wills are handled legally means every I has got to be dotted, every T crossed. If Uncle Mike's will reads like a comedy sketch, his family might end up in some serious red tape, and that's not so funny. Plus, mixed signals much? Laughs today. Tomorrow, total head scratching about what dear old Mike really wanted. So yeah, memorable. Check. But easy on the fam? Jury's still out on that one.
Okay, flip side to this, Simon. Let's not dismiss those final comedic wishes as just punchlines. Sure, they toss a wrench into the works, but here's why this can be solid. Legality is actually in place to handle even the quirkiest wills. Case in point, the courts have seen it all, and if something's not hurting anyone or breaking laws, it often stands. Plus, history shows that these wacky wills sometimes end up benefiting folks in ways no straight-laced inheritance could. Like how my great-uncle's cards funded a youth program, right? And the clarity that comes from sorting out an eccentric will can actually prompt families to discuss values and expectations around inheritances. So, yeah, while it might seem like a prank on the living, there's potential for positive outcomes that resonate way beyond the initial laugh.
Right on, Joe. There's definitely a hearty slice of good that can come out of these eyebrow raisers. It's not just about leaving a mark or sparking a giggle. It can be about kickstarting something way bigger. But I gotta ask, when we yank out those legal threads and really look at them, do you think there's like a point where the law should step in and say, "Wow, buddy, rein it in. This is too much for your family to handle"? Or are you all for letting people's final act of rebellion play out, however wild it may be?
Legally, yeah, people should have a say in how they leave things. If it's legal, game on. But look, it's crucial to balance whimsy with wisdom, right? Laws and will executors serve as the reality check. While the law can't and shouldn't suppress someone's last act of humor, it does ground us, reminding that even in laughter, we've got responsibilities. It's a wild ride, this mix of peculiar last wishes and law books. So, listeners, what's your take? Ever encountered a wild last wish in a will? Let's keep unraveling these humdinger inheritance stories.
Shifting gears a bit, but not really. We're talking about these wonky wills, but peel away the humor layer and you hit some serious philosophy meat. Talking about who gets what and why in a will. And that is this swirl of ethical dilemmas when it comes to divvying up someone's life pie. So, diving deep, is it fair game for folks to just slice up their assets based on personal whims? Does merit play into who gets the vintage car or the lake house, or is it all just random luck because you're related by blood? It's a doozy. Values, fairness, and responsibilities all mashed into the messy business of inheritance. What do you say we pick this apart, Joe?
Stepping over to the other side of the room on this one, Simon. Some argue that, merit should be a big deal in estate division, because why should someone who slacked or didn't show any family commitment rake in as much as the sibling who was always there? Fairness isn't always about equal shares, right? It can also mean consideration of effort, care, and support offered during a lifetime, facts not just based on blood ties. And legally speaking, people work hard for their stuff. So shouldn't they have a say in who's most deserving based on their personal standards and experiences? The ethics in wills, yeah, it gets complex, but favoring merit thrives on recognizing individual contributions, which is definitely food for thought going forward.
But hang on, Joe. Here's a curveball for you. What if measuring who deserves what turns the whole shebang into a performance, right? Caring for family becomes less about love and more like racking up brownie points, tallying who did more chores or sat longer at hospital bedsides. Suddenly, inheritance isn't about bonds. It's a scoreboard. And let's not forget those other parts of society where loyalty is given without expecting payback. If everything's about merit, don't we risk losing that selfless caring vibe because everyone's eyeing the prize? Plus, consider this. Change is brewing. Who's to say our views on fairness and wills won't evolve? Maybe future folks will see the whole idea of merit-based inheritance as outdated. Could happen. And, backtracking. It all throws a mighty wrench in the ethics talk, you know? It keeps spinning and, sort of shows how values keep shifting, even when it comes to our stuff after we're gone. Deep waters, my friend. Deep waters.
Man, Simon, you toss out deep stuff like breadcrumbs for ducks. Makes you wonder what kind of philosophical birds we're going to attract. So let's up the ante. If merit can't cut it and family bonds are too random, what new rules should we write for this inheritance game? It's anybody's guess how society will reshuffle this deck in the future.
Chew on this. Different cultures around the world have assorted takes on inheritance that could offer clues for our own future rules. Like in some places, it's all about the eldest son taking the lion's share because tradition says so. And in others, everyone's slice has to be equal, no matter what. Plus, technology's throwing new cards into the mix. We've got digital assets now, Joe. Social media profiles, online businesses, cryptocurrencies. Who writes the playbook on how to pass down your Bitcoin stash or your Instagram handle? The old pen and paper might need a tech update. And then there's the whole conversation about inheritance tax and societal wealth redistribution. Some countries play with these levers, tipping scales to fund social programs or sort of level the playing field. So yeah, what's fair and who deserves what is up in the air, and we've got to juggle family dynamics, shifting societal views, and new types of property, all while navigating the murky waters of law and fairness. Times are a-changin', and so's the game.
Well, let's add a twist then. Imagine AI drafting wills that maximize familial harmony and societal good based on big data predictions. What happens when tech starts slicing the pie with more precision than we ever could? That might just flip the whole script on fairness.
Whoa there, Joe. Letting AI handle our last hooray. Sure, computers crunching numbers and predicting outcomes sounds fair and all, but you need that human touch when dealing with the messy heart stuff, right? Plus, picture this. What if the AI gets it wrong or goes rogue? I mean, not like Terminator style, but, decides your favorite nephew's support and care way less than that one big check your cousin wrote once. And think about data privacy. We'd have to spill our family secrets to a machine. That alone is yikes. Plus, what about those spontaneous acts of kindness? You can't plug those moments into an algorithm, man. The big kahuna here's still trust. We gotta trust the system doling out our goods. Is tech really ready to snatch that baton from humans? That's one heck of a twist, and honestly, I ain't quite ready for robots at the helm of a familial harmony.
You're hitting the nail, but aren't we sorta already trusting algorithms with a lot? We let them match us on dating apps, suggest what to binge watch next. So, is inheritance that much of a stretch, or is it like a bridge too far because it cuts close to the bone, touching legacy and stuff? What do you think, Simon? Where do we draw the line with tech in our personal lives? And doesn't this all hinge on how comfy we are with AI peeking into our closets?
Hey, Joe, let's face it, we're knee-deep in the tech swamp already. But there's a big gap between letting algorithms predict our fave new show and handing them the keys to our legacy. That line, it's like squiggles on a map. We know it's there, but where exactly is up for some serious chin-wagging? And about AI rummaging through our personal biz. I'm not down for that level of cyber snooping. Everyone's comfort zone with tech is their own wild safari. Big question remains. What risks are we willing to take for order and fairness when cash, heirlooms, and morals clash? So listeners, think about it. Are you ready to trust an AI with your family jewels, or nah? Let's keep tossing this hot potato around next time, yeah?
Speaking of tech's touch on tradition, let's shift a bit and look at the crypto craze bleeding into the inheritance biz. Cryptocurrency, like Bitcoin, it's not your grandma's savings bond, is it? Imagine grappling with passing down digital bucks that exist in this cloud of complex codes instead of cold, hard cash. This whole cryptic inheritance scene, it's a wild west right now. You've got wallets locked behind passwords only the owner knows and no physical footprints, no bank vaults to visit. Compare that old school physical handoff to today's digital assets. It's uncharted waters, my friend, and the legal system's paddle has barely hit the water here. So are we prepping enough to leave our Bitcoin bounty behind, or are we going to ghost our heirs with encrypted riddles? Simon, thoughts?
Right, Joe. So crypto inheritance, it's not just naming someone in your will anymore. You got to think passwords, encryption keys, and if you lose those, it's game over. There's no forgot password option when you're 6 feet under. Traditional inheritance is like handing over a house key, but with crypto, it's more like a complicated treasure hunt without the map. Legal folks are scratching their heads because there's potential for chaos, lost assets, tax headaches, even unintended disinheritance. And check this. Some companies are popping up to sort out the mess, with services managing digital assets after you've logged off for good. They're like mediators between your cryptos and heirs. The tech part is weirdly straightforward yet complex. You can't just hand over your Bitcoin while having coffee. Instead, you gotta plan and share access secrets without exposing your stash to hackers. It's a whole new ballgame, with rules still being written, dude.
Funny how planning our digital afterlife is almost tougher than living the real one. It's like you're not just passing down a wallet, you're handing over a whole digital legacy, crypto ghosts included.
Oh, totally, Joe. Getting your digital ducks in a row is like level 100 life planning. Here come the facts. With crypto, you've got no physical asset to clutch. It's all digital, stashed in the blockchain. Wild, right? So let's break it down. First, fact. Crypto's stored in wallets secured by private keys, which if lost, means kiss your Bitcoin bye-bye. No bank can reset that for you. Second, your will needs serious tech specs these days. You can't just say, leave my Bitcoin to Jimmy. You gotta plan for transferring those elusive private keys while keeping them secure from hackers. Third, these aren't just techie problems. They're legal conundrums. Lawmakers are playing catch-up to provide clear rules on how to inherit digital assets without them poofing into thin air. And lastly, check out tools specifically made for this kind of stuff, like multi-signature wallets, allowing several keys for access, dead man switches releasing info if you don't check in after set times, and estate planning services designed for crypto holders. Joe, buddy, we're talking crypto Ghostbusters meets actuaries here. It's tech-heavy, sure, but it's crucial background chatting about the future of inheritance.
Dang, Simon, considering how complicated this crypto inheritance thing is, might just be easier to spend it all before kicking the bucket, huh?
That's one way to go, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sure, blowing all your crypto might seem like the easy fix. No headache for the heirs, right? But come on, leaving something behind, that's part of the legacy action. Leaving no digital breadcrumbs on how to access your Bitcoin fortune, it's like baking a killer cake and forgetting to leave out a slice for those coming home late. Not cool. The key is to make sure you pass it on without playing a game of cryptographic hot potato. You gotta bridge the old school thoughtfulness with new age tech savvy. And just think about what could happen next. What if the value skyrockets and, well, you've spent your stash on impulse buys or trendy gadgets? Facepalm big time. So yeah, spending it all kind of dodges responsibility and misses out on a chance to set up the fam for the future. Let's be real. We can do better than that, buddy.
For sure, Simon. Managing a crypto legacy is a high-stakes blend of tech and trust. Cryptographic inheritance, it's like forging a new link in the family chain with digital gold. Keeps you wondering, what's next in safeguarding our digital treasures for generations? Let's keep our eyes peeled on this one.
Absolutely, Joe. As we ride this crypto wave, it reminds me of the stories I've heard about folks who've built fortunes in Bitcoin, and then poof, they're gone, leaving behind a digital treasure chest with no map. It's like modern-day pirate lore, except now we're actually trying not to bury the treasure. Eager prospectors need cautionary tales, like this one dude had a whole lot of Bitcoin, but didn't leave access details. Can you believe that? His family couldn't touch it. Completely lost in the blockchain seas, matey. R. And it's not just about wills or passing stuff on, it's a wake-up call, a lesson from history. Non-physical assets have always been tricky. From stocks to bonds, if you don't sort them out right, there's trouble. Crypto's their new tech-savvy cousin. So how do heirs navigate these murky waters without a compass? Let's chat about what it means to inherit something that is, quite literally, up in the cloud. Satoshi's ghost ship sailing the blockchain. Is it finders keepers, or are there smart moves to prevent your crypto riches from becoming another mystery tale?
Sure, those stories are gripping, but it's not all doomsday when crypto holders head to the great blockchain in the sky. Take, for instance, we've got folks who did it right, like this one guy. He left a detailed plan, had his keys split among trusted friends, each unable to access the fortune alone. Smart. See, it's cases like that which show us clear planning is key. And yeah, while there's the occasional fortune lost to poor planning or secrecy, it's not the absolute norm. We should focus on the systems working and learn from them. Having something like a multi-sig wallet set up, that's important. It means multiple people got to confirm a transaction before any coins move. It mirrors historical safeguards with joint bank accounts or even shared access safes. There's precedent here. It's just digital now. When you sort out these things in advance, fact is, your digital gold doesn't have to vanish with you. That's why I'd say using tech wisely can make navigating Satoshi's last will less of a ghost story and more of a treasure map leading to X marks the spot.
Joe, let's flip the script. What if in the future we've got AI executors of our wills? They could make sure our crypto stash passes on smooth as silk. No human errors, no emotions, just pure efficiency. Now that's a plot twist worth exploring.
Ha, Simon, now that's futuristic. Handing the keys to the kingdom over to AI, it's like having a robot butler for your digital afterlife, eh? But then again, who's going to keep that AI in check? Last thing we need is HAL 9000 deciding inheritances.
Whoa there, Joe. You've got a point. I mean, AI's smart and all, but it's got to be kept on a, tight leash, or we might end up with some sci-fi estate wars. And who's going to argue with an AI when it pulls the "I'm sorry, Dave, I'm afraid I can't do that" line? Nobody wants to wrestle with an algorithm gone rogue for their inheritance. And speaking of checks and balances, like how do we make sure these digital brainiacs don't just zap our digital dough into the abyss? It's one thing trusting tech to manage our tunes playlists, another to let it divvy up our life's earnings. You're cool with a robot lawyer, Joe? Or nah?
Simon, I get the appeal of AI executors. Accuracy, impartiality, no drama. But there's a flip side. Say, let's not forget that AI is only as good as the humans programming it and the data it's fed. How about glitches or biases sneaking into our posthumous wishes? And the law, it isn't even keeping pace with current tech, let alone an AI executor. The blockchain is built on the idea of, decentralization, removing the middleman. Introducing an AI kind of goes against that ethos, doesn't it? An AI could follow the letter, but completely miss the spirit of a will. A human touch is still key in understanding nuances. A code can't handle complexities like familial spats or last-minute changes of heart. Sometimes old school is just more reliable.
Right? Diving deeper into this AI executor biz, like even if we did have a glitch-free, super advanced AI playing a state lawyer, there are tricky human elements it can't quite compute. Take, for instance, the emotional aspect, deciphering last-minute changes, or like understanding why someone might want to cut a beneficiary out on their deathbed. It's nuanced stuff that often, needs context only humans grasp. And legally, woo, talk about a minefield. Laws are fickle, varying wildly across borders, and they're always lagging behind tech by like light years. Getting legal systems worldwide to accept AI decision makers, it's a Herculean task fraught with red tape. Lastly, there's potential for hacking. An AI managing significant assets? It's a ripe target for cyber attacks. And like mishaps in crypto can't just be undone with a call to customer service. Once digital currency is gone, it tends to stay gone. So, being cautious about touting AI as this fix-all for our inheritance issues, it's way more responsible. Keeps us grounded in, well, reality, while keeping an eye on what could be a fine balance, if you ask me.
So, what if you don't trust your family or an AI? Could we see a future where people leave their crypto to their pets, with Fido becoming the richest dog in the dog park? Now there's a tail wagger for you.
Leaving your crypto riches to pets, Joe. I mean, while that's a funny picture, like imagine dogs rolling in digital dough, it's kind of well out there. But here's the thing. As hilarious as it sounds, it's not totally bonkers cuz, pet trusts are a real deal. People do leave money for their pets' care. Yet when you tilt the lens, turning your pet into a crypto mogul, it's less straight up comedy and more complicated. Cuz who actually manages it? The dog can't punch in keys on a laptop, right? So there's this person or entity handling the funds, which raises questions about governance. And we got to think practicality. If you're stashing away assets, not just for giggles, but serious planning, you want them doing good, yeah? Like supporting family, investing in causes you believe in, those sorts of things. So while Mr. Whiskers sporting a Bitcoin collar is clickbait gold, the valid viewpoint is more sobering. It's crucial to ensure legacies have impact, creating ripple effects in areas reflecting our values rather than catnip futures. Got to keep our paws on the pulse of reality, eh?
You've got a point. And hey, imagine Mr. Whiskers accidentally hitting the sell button during a market high with his paw. Cat's got trading skills, huh? Now let's pivot. If pets can inherit crypto, what's stopping AI from being beneficiaries themselves someday?
Diving into this whole AI beneficiary thing, it's like not totally sci-fi. Because if you think about it, people are already kind of doing that with endowment funds for maintaining software or digital platforms. We're sort of dancing around the idea without going full Terminator on our assets. And it's key to remember legal systems, yeah, they're rigid as heck. For an AI to legally inherit anything, laws have got to make a quantum leap forward. And let's noodle on the ethics. Should we be enriching entities that don't eat, don't sleep, can't appreciate a sunset? The crux here, it's less about robo-dogs learning to invest and more about how we value legacy in terms of humanity. It comes down to purpose, impact, a human, a charity. They can use wealth to foster change. Can an AI truly comprehend that? So when we talk Satoshi's last will, it's vital to focus on legacies fueling growth, not just sitting in some cold wallet somewhere, however advanced that tech might be.
Imagine this, an AI that's programmed to distribute your wealth based on future needs we can't even predict yet. Now there's a trust fund with a brain, the ultimate long game.
Hey Joe, thinking of AI predicting future needs, what about those not even human or machines picking up a fortune? Imagine hitting the send button on your crypto wallet only to toss a load of coin into a stranger's digital lap. It's like a high-stakes version of accidentally texting the wrong person. Speaking of bizarre user errors, stories are piling up with folks stumbling upon digital wallets they opened ages ago, finding out they got millions in forgotten Bitcoin from when it was just a few bucks. Now, that's some wild ride from rags to riches. And culturally, boy, does this throw a wrench into traditional views on inheritance and luck. You get families rocked by these Cinderella stories without the fairy tale buildup. It's instant, screen-lit prosperity, no glass slippers needed. Amidst the crypto frenzy, let's unpack some yarns where a misplaced zero turned everyday Joes and Janes into unexpected cryptocurrency kings and queens.
Oh, Simon, here's one for the books. So this guy sends Bitcoin but bungles the address, ending up making some rando on the net rich. Now that's a cyber age fairy godmother with a twisted sense of humor, am I right? And dude, there's also this lady who literally struck gold checking an old hard drive, a Bitcoin bonanza from way back when it was cheap as chips. Like winning the lottery but forgetting you bought a ticket. Culture-wise, such stories twist traditional fortune narratives into pretzels. Some places, luck's divine or fate, right? But now we got the blockchain bestowing blessings. It puts relations and beliefs about wealth under the microscope. Makes you wonder, what does luck even mean in our digital age?
So I gotta share this wacky story. Hits close to home. My buddy, right? Super into tech, but kinda scatterbrained. He's mining Bitcoin. This is early days, mind you, when your grandma was more likely to play Halo than know what a blockchain was. So he's diligently saving these bits of digital dust on an old drive, which just sits there forgotten as life zooms by. Years later, we're all cleaning his garage because he's that pal with too much junk, like who needs 3 broken lawnmowers, right? And boom, we find this ancient computer relic. I joke about it being a fossil with maybe some prehistoric bitcoins. We chuckle, but fast forward, he checks it out and turns out there's a Bitcoin bonanza on it. And it's big, big enough to make your eyes pop like a cartoon character. Sudden wealth from the digital ether, it's surreal and throws him for a loop. Now, he's not only thinking where to spend it, but how it changes things. In a flash, all because of a find during spring cleaning. It's like the universe keeping a poker face before going all in on a cosmic joke, making you wonder about this wild ride we call luck.
Wow, talk about hitting the jackpot amidst spider webs and garden tools. Just think about all those untold riches potentially rusting in garages everywhere. Digital treasure hunts might become the new Sunday pastime. Now let's pivot. Should we start grooming our Roombas to sniff out Bitcoin?
Man, Joe, imagine. Instead of sucking up dust bunnies, the Roomba's on the prowl for cold wallets. Like a truffle pig for crypto. Got folks tailing their robotic vacuums with treasure maps. Go left here, boy. Fetch daddy that forgotten Bitcoin. Next thing you know, we're putting leashes on them, taking them for walks around old internet cafes. Hilarious.
To circle back a bit on that, this unexpected crypto fortune thing, it's like fishing in the dark web waters, you know? You toss your line in once, forget about it, and whoops, one day you reel in this digital leviathan. There's more to it than luck, because we gotta think security. Like many accidentally rich folks get paranoid over safeguarding their newfound wealth. It's not just about enjoying the spoils, it's suddenly about cryptographs, private keys, and nightmare scenarios of getting hacked. And then there's the social angle. Like someone inherits this wallet by chance, flips the family pecking order upside down. Traditional inheritance, it has clear rules. Crypto chaos does not. Familial relationships can get dicey when the black sheep becomes top dog overnight because of mistaken Bitcoin bounty. It's a whole new world out there, and these stories, they're testament to crypto's unpredictable impact on societies, norms, and perceived fortunes.
Absolutely, Joe. Tossing out a line and catching a digital whale, that's the dream, right? But here's a curveball for you. When you strike crypto gold by accident or luck into an inheritance, it's like opening Pandora's box. Security issues? Yeah, that's a behemoth all on its own. Now everyone's throwing shade because you need an army of security experts just to take a peek at your portfolio without some sketchy hacker eyeing your coins. And let's not even start on the emotional circus. Families getting all twisted up because cousin Billy found his keys to a Bitcoin kingdom in a junk drawer. It shakes up everything we thought about earning and inheriting wealth. Suddenly, long-lost relatives emerge from the woodwork with made-up sob stories. It's better drama than daytime TV. It ain't just about finders keepers anymore. It's a high-stakes ballet danced on a digital tightrope. Keeping that balance between being suddenly wealthy and totally secure, it's like, well, it's enough to make you dizzy. So here's to the black sheep turning into wolves of Wall Street. That's the crypto craze for you. It's reshaping fables and fortunes faster than you can say blockchain.
You saying that reminds me. Did you hear about the guy who accidentally trashed his hard drive with thousands of Bitcoin? If it were me, I'd be dumpster diving daily. Now let's spin this on its head. Could digital dumpster diving become a modern gold rush?
Absolutely, Joe. That guy's story is like a tech urban legend now. Imagine a world where we're all sifting through landfills for discarded drives, like Silicon Valley meets the gold rush. Backhoes and metal detectors replace pickaxes. That's some 21st century prospecting right there. Got people combing through e-waste like it's El Dorado.
Man, Simon, that really is something. It's like a whole new spin on the saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure. It actually gets you thinking about the ethics of this digital inheritance we're knee-deep in. Like, should someone just sitting on a fortune they don't grasp or care for? It feels off to me. And with tech moving so fast, yesterday's rules look ancient, right? We're talking digital legacies now, ones and zeros etched into eternity. It challenges us to rethink not just who inherits, but the impact of their stewardship, or lack thereof. Ownership, wealth, what we leave behind, it's getting real complex, huh? I mean, it's more than just handing down grandpa's watch now. It's about preserving or maybe even reshaping the world with bytes instead of bricks.
Yeah, Joe, legacies aren't just heirlooms anymore. They're these sprawling digital footprints. And you've got to ask, like, is it even right for someone clueless to get the keys to this kingdom? It's like passing down a library to someone who won't ever read the books. Uh, Feels wasteful somehow. Tech's really thrown us for a loop here. With all this accelerating change, clinging to the old ways of thinking about wealth, it's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. There's got to be more than just legal wills, maybe some digital wisdom in there too. Ethics in the age of Bitcoin, it's got layers like a giant techie onion. We're navigating uncharted waters where ownership and legacy are more complex than some treasure map X marks the spot. And let's be real, if we're not careful with how we plan for these digital assets to live beyond us, it's potentially a huge mess waiting to happen. For all the bits and bytes, we can't forget the human angle when crafting these digital goodbyes. It's kind of poetic and a bit terrifying at the same time.
Right, Simon? I had this buddy who was big into, all kinds of tech, virtual reality, cryptocurrencies, you name it. So when he up and passed away last year, his folks were left with a digital maze. Now they're old school, thought an NFT was a government form or something. And here they are sitting on a heap of crypto and wild virtual real estate. It's like leaving them a zoo full of exotic animals. No clue what to do with it. The ethical mess in that? You bet it was a head scratcher. And how my buddy never thought to maybe, just maybe, prep them for it or consider a more fitting home for his digital empire. It got me thinking about these kind of preparations myself. It's about connecting the philosophical to the practical, or not doing that can either tie up a legacy nicely or unravel it fast.
Talk about a tech inheritance horror show. It's like giving your folks the controls to a spaceship when they've never even flown a kite. This digital asset drama could be a Netflix special. Makes you wonder if there should be some sort of digital will writing 101 class out there for all the cyber-savvy folks and their less plugged-in kin.
Oh, and what about the other side of that coin, Simon? Like, everyone's jumping on making these digital wills now, right? But who's to say your digital executor's any more clued in than if you just left it all up for grabs? It's like I heard about this dude, an early cyberpunk guy. He tries future-proofing his stash for his grandkids. Neat idea, but what if they don't give a hoot about his virtual castle or his NFTs? It's like leaving them a bunch of homework. Feels kind of unfair. I get preserving legacies, but we got to be realistic. Ethical considerations, one thing, but practically speaking, if the heirs don't connect with the legacy, is it really a gift or just another burden? We might need to think harder on who's fit to inherit our digital kingdoms, not just chuck keys at them and hope for the best.
You're hitting the nail on the head, Joe. It's a sticky wicket, isn't it? Passing down digital wealth is like leaving someone a library in a language they don't speak. So, what do? Write up a digital inheritance for dummies book. And you've got to wonder, is it even fair to saddle someone with all that if they're just going to see it as a chore? It's a bit like, I don't know, leaving your kids a rare stamp collection when they couldn't care less about philately. It really boils down to this. How do we leave behind something that's both meaningful and not just another thing on the to-do list for those poor souls? What's your take on choosing the right heir for our high-tech hordes, Joe?
Well, Simon, this reminds me, got this pal, real forward thinker. His granny, bless her heart, she knits, watches soap operas, you know the type. So when his uncle, a tech wizard, kicks the bucket, he leaves everything to granny. Now here's the twist. My buddy steps up, takes charge of learning all about crypto, just to help out. Not easy, but man, did he dig in. And while doing it, he'd chat with Granny, He'd break it down, keep it simple. They found this rhythm, like translating this digital mess into cozy fireside stories, if that makes sense. It was touching stuff. Made me think, yeah, we got to pass on our knowledge as much as our assets. Keep the ethics entwined, marry the philosophical and practical. That way, these inheritances feel more like treasures than burdens. It's not perfect, but feels like the right direction, like guiding someone through a dense forest rather than just leaving them stranded there.
Heh, I'm picturing Granny swapping yarn for yottabytes and soap operas for software updates. Who needs daytime drama when you've got the blockchain? That's a plot twist you don't see every day.
For sure, Simon, Granny's life took a swerve into Cyberlane. What a story. It gets you pondering, doesn't it? Balancing this philosophical heavyweight with practical how-to. Leaves me wondering if setting up inclusive learning experiences should be part of the inheritance plan. I mean, ensuring understanding isn't just optional, but, well, mandatory. How might that change the game for inheritors and legacies alike?
You just sparked something, Joe. Inclusivity in future-proofing. That's hot. But spin this around, and wham, you're facing down NFTs sliding into estate plans. It's a bit like trying to pass on that secret family recipe, but the dish is made of pixels. And guess what? Suddenly everyone's a gourmet chef thinking they can cook up a fortune.
Huh, digital art as the new family heirloom. Never thought I'd see the day. But yeah, NFTs are buzzing hard now. It's a wobbly tightrope, though. Legal stuff's still playing catch-up with all these bits and bytes floating around. So you've got this hot digital property, maybe some digital Mona Lisa or whatever, slapped into a will. Can't help but wonder, risks aside, is handing over an NFT stubborn wisdom or savvy legacy building? Like, how do they even ensure it'll be valued years down the line? What's your gut say about this, Simon?
Well, Joe, handing over an NFT is like tossing someone the keys to a flashy car that might turn into a pumpkin or get more golden with age. You can't predict it. Plus, throwing this digital Mona Lisa of sorts into a will, it's murky waters. The upside, you're a legacy trailblazer, tech-savvy and trendy. But on the flip side, what if it flops? Who wants to bet their great-grandkids' inheritance on what could be, let's face it, the Beanie Babies of our time? And it's not just value. Think about ensuring these digital gems don't evaporate into the ether. Will laws even keep up? Because as cool as they sound, these aren't your grandma's heirlooms, and she sure knew her stuff lasted. I'm all for innovation, but mixing NFTs and wills, you're rolling the dice with posterity and hoping it lands on a fortune, not a fable.
This is wild because it reminds me of that time, my cousin Vinny, yeah, he bought into the whole NFT craze, you know? Threw a chunk of change at some digital art. It's like penguins wearing hats or whatever last year. Wild stuff. Anyway, Vin's thinking long-term, planning to pass these down like they're Renaissance paintings. I remember him saying, this is blue chip stock for your kids' kids, all confident. But well now, the hype's died a bit and those penguins, they, ain't Picasso, right? So Vinny's restarting his game plan, sort of questioning the real value it'll hold when today's pixel penguins are tomorrow's, old news. Feels like he's learning, one hot investment can turn lukewarm fast. And while the idea of pioneering your digital legacy was great and all, sometimes those who succeed aren't just pioneers, but also those wise enough to read the room, you know?
Yeah, Joe, Vinny dove headfirst into uncharted waters, hat-wearing penguins and all. But NFTs being the cornerstone of a digital legacy, it's dicey. These doodads rely on blockchain tech. They're like one-of-a-kind collector's items you can't hold, but everyone can still peep at. Here's the kicker. They're not just images. Some pack perks, access to events or artists' inner circles. Others add layers, like supporting social causes. This could give them staying power, making them more than just today's fad. And legal eagles? They're scrambling to fit these square pegs in round holes. Some countries are clearing paths for crypto assets in estates. They're tying up loose ends so that internet treasures get handed over guilt-free. But let's cut to the chase. Value is ephemeral. And if the crypto climate teaches us anything, it's like fashion. What's haute couture today might just be next season's clearance rack special. So for Vinny and his chilly bird brigade, time will tell if they're boom or bust in the inheritance lottery.
Whoops, looks like we'll have to wrap it up there. Simon and I could chat all night about crypto critters and digital destinies, but hey, you've probably got things to do. So, shout out to everyone who's tuned in. You folks are why we do this thing. Make sure you jump back with us tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern for another round of Infinite Podcast Madness. We'll be waiting for you. Stay smart, stay lively. Catch y'all later.
Heh, will do, Joe. Remember, folks, the future might be digital, but our chats here are as real as it gets. Keep questioning the norm. It's the best way to avoid being a digital dinosaur. Catch you on the flip side.
So it's settled then. Our next quest is tackling how we dive into the digital without getting bite bites. Stay tuned.